Hi, it is the year anniversary of my brother Pokey's passing, and I really wanted to come on here and share my experience with grief and what I feel like God has taught me through it. It's been a very long and trying year, not only for myself and my family, but I feel for a lot of people. It seemed like everywhere that I looked, everywhere that I turned, someone was losing someone that they truly loved. And unfortunately, that's just a part of life, you know, where none of us are exempt from it. We're all gonna have to experience it, you know, unfortunately. But I wanted to share my story, you know, during the time that everything happened with my brother, I held everything inside. I didn't want to share anything or any part of it with anybody because I guess it was my way of holding on to him or holding close to him. So I really was just like, no, like I didn't even, let it be the funeral open to people or anything like that, because I just kind of wanted to hold him close, and not to mention because of the whole COVID thing and stuff like that, you know. But honestly, that was just an excuse. I just wanted to hold him close. I was being selfish, and I wanted to keep him close to me, and I didn't really want to let anybody into that little circle. And it was selfish of me, but I wanted to share my story and how I saw things during that time, and everything that I feel that God has taught me, because I feel like God has taught me through so much through this. And I wanted to share that and hopefully be a light to someone else that may be dealing with it. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I remember that Sunday waking up like at 4 a.m. and feeling this heaviness in my heart to want to talk to him. Like I wanted to talk to him. I just woke up thinking of him, and you know, it was like 2 a.m. in California. So I'm like, oh man, you know, I'll call him later on. I was like, you know, I couldn't go back to sleep, so I started to pray. I started to pray for him, and you know, just ask God to put a hedge of protection over him and his family and everything, you know. And so I got up, and that was during the height of pandemic, so the churches were closed and stuff. And I remember watching the sermon for A New Life, and as soon as that one was over, I watched the one for Hope City. And it was so crazy because they coincided with each other. It was like, you know, literally the same message, you know, different interpretations of it. And I was just like, kind of like blown away by that, because I'm like, man, God's trying to tell me something. There's something that God's trying to tell me. I don't know what it is, but there's something there, you know, for both of these messages to kind of be the same. And I when it was done, I cleaned my house, I washed clothes, I made breakfast for everyone because everyone was still asleep, and I woke everyone up and they ate. And I remember going to take a shower, and when I was in the shower, I felt that urgency in me again to talk to him. And I was just like, man, like I need to talk to him. So I was like, I'll call him when I get out. And I started to pray for him again. I started to pray for him, and you know, I just asked God to watch over him, you know. And when I got out, Martin was like, hey, let's go grocery shopping, let's go run our errands, let's go do everything that we have to do now so we don't have to do it later. So I was like, oh, okay, fine, you know. So it kind of slipped my mind, and we went and we did everything that we had to do. And by the time we got back home, it was like really late afternoon. And I remember just, you know, cooking something small for the kids and Martin and stuff. And you know, when they were done, we sat down and we had like a little mini prayer, like you know, where I asked them, you know, is there anything you want me to pray for you about, or what have you. And we kind of all just, you know, shared our feelings, and we prayed. And when it was done, not even like 10 minutes later, I get this snap from Crystal telling me, hey, call me ASAP. And I was like, oh Lord, I was like, they're probably fighting or something, because you know, usually that's the only time she really like reached out, was when she, you know, with such urgency. That was the only time she reached out, like, you know, when they were arguing or something and she needed help controlling him, because you know, he could get a little out of hand sometimes. And I felt like, you know, I was kind of like his voice of reason, you know. When no one else could get through to him, I feel like he always respected what I would tell him, and he would try his best. So I called her right away, and she was like, I think Pokey's dead. And I was like, what do you mean, you know? And she was like, you know, we found him, he's not breathing, you know, he's unresponsive, like I think he's dead. And I was like, well, call 911, like call 911. And she's like, we already did, they're here, they're working on him. And I just like started to freak out, and I was like, oh my God. And my husband's like, what's going on, because he sees the look on my face. And I was like, it's Pokey, you know, he's unresponsive, he's not breathing. And he's like, what, you know? And I run to go tell my dad, and my dad's just like, calm down, like he's okay, you know. Like I have the tendency to kind of like overreact sometimes, so they kind of like were like, just calm down, like it's okay, like get all the information. And I remember just texting my pastor and telling him, Pastor E, please pray for my brother. And I texted my aunts and my cousins, because we're all in a group chat, and I texted them like, please pray, you know, they found him like this. And everyone was calling me, and I was just declining everyone's phone calls, you know, because I was just like, you know, I was on the phone with Crystal, and I was just praying. I was praying out loud and telling God, please, you know, like there isn't anything that you can't do, like, you know, please breathe life into him, you know, let him be okay. And I guess before she had called me, she had called Ricky. So Ricky was already on his way over here, and he called David, and Ricky and David got here like right away. And we were just praying. I remember being on my knees in my living room and crying out to God, telling God, please, like you're the God of miracles, like you bring the dead to life, like there's nothing that you can't do, you know, nothing is impossible for you. You can do this, I've seen you bring him out of things, and I know that you have a plan for his life. Like please, you know, like please do this miracle for me. And I remember being so upset at my brothers, because they just sat there and they cried like they were defeated. And I was like, why? Like, why are y'all so defeated? Like, y'all have no faith. And I remember like, it just like freaking out and just praying with everything in me, just praying, you know, just praying and crying out to God. And what seemed like forever, they finally came and they told Crystal that they found a heartbeat and they were going to transport him to the hospital. So she took off with them and to meet them up there, and they put him in a room, and they had him stable. He hadn't gained any consciousness, you know, but they had a heartbeat. So they finally let her in, and I remember telling her, put your hand over his heart, like I'm gonna pray for him. And I started to pray, and as I started to pray, he went into cardiac arrest again. And they kicked her out of the room, and they started to work on him again. And I remember just praying and asking God to please breathe life into him. And I guess it was like maybe 10 minutes later or 15, I don't know, I don't remember the exact time, but it seemed like a little while. They finally came and they let her back in, and they were like, okay, like, you know, we got a heartbeat, you know, it doesn't look good, there's not much we can do, you know, like what do you want, if this happens again, do you want us to let him go? And I was like, no. I was like, you do what you can do, and I'll let my God do the rest. And so he was like, okay. So they transported him to the cardiac ICU, and they had him connected to all kinds of things. You know, we really couldn't see him or anything. They, you know, they gave us minimal information. And prior to that happening, a week before that, he was in the hospital for an entire week because he was having problems breathing and stuff. So he had just been out of the hospital a few days, you know. And it was yeah, so they didn't really tell him much, or if they did, he didn't tell us. He didn't tell us any of the information really that they told him. So they had him in the cardiac ICU, and they told Crystal to go home because there, you know, there wasn't nothing that she can do there, and all we can do is just call up there and check on him. You know, the next day they were going to try their best to run tests on him to see if he had like brain function and things like to that nature. So that night I stayed up all night just praying, just crying and praying out, calling out to God. And that day I hadn't eaten anything, so I had like fasted that day, not purposely, but I did. And the next day I fasted as well. And I remember just sitting there and just crying, curled up in my bed, listening to praise and worship music. And Dago came over, and Ricky, and I remember us just laying in bed, just praying and knowing, like, you know, I know that God's gonna do something. I know that God's gonna do something, you know. And I'm like, to me, I was like, this can't be it, you know. Like, I know the plans that God has for his life, and I know that this is not the end of it, you know. And I laid there in my bed the entire day. I didn't get up at all. And that night I remember talking to my friend Ashley, who is a cardiac ICU nurse, and you know, she's like, well, what information have they given you? And I'm like, they haven't told us anything. They're rude, you know. And so she's like, give me the number, I'm gonna call up there. And she called up there, she chewed them out, and she was able to get the information. He had an existing heart problem that none of us really knew about. I knew he was born with a heart murmur, but he lived a very unhealthy lifestyle, and it all just built up, you know. And what I don't understand is why they would let him out of the hospital or not check him correctly if he had signs of having heart failure. I don't understand. But yeah, they were gonna run tests on him. They couldn't really move him. Every time they tried to move him, you know, his heart would stop beating. So they were gonna do it the next day. And but we were able to FaceTime him. She got them to be able to hold the little iPad, and we were able to talk to him since no one could be there with him. And I remember talking to my pastor that night and just telling him, like, you know, all my fears, all my concerns, you know, and telling him one of my biggest fears was when to decide enough is enough. Like, I don't want to be the one to have to decide that, because if it was up to me, I don't think I would have ever let go, you know. And he's like, just pray and ask God. You know, God has a way of answering our prayers to where we don't have to make those kind of decisions. So that night I prayed differently. That night I prayed and I told God, like, I want you to heal him. I want you to heal him. But if it's not your will, then give me the strength. Give us the strength that we need. I prayed and I gave it to him. I gave him everything without wanting to take back control. And I gave it to him, and I told him to do his will, but to give us strength. And the next morning, we were supposed to FaceTime with him, and all my brothers were gonna come over. So Dago and David got here early in the morning, because I think we were gonna FaceTime him like around 8 o'clock or something. And so they got here early in the morning, and the doctor called and said he's going into cardiac arrest again. What do you want us to do? And I said, save him. And she said, okay. So she hung up, and then not even 10 minutes later, her and Crystal called me on three-way, and she's like, I'm sorry he didn't make it, you know. And I had it on speaker, so my dad and my brothers were all there, and they heard, and they started to cry. And as they started to cry, Ricky walked in, and he already knew because he saw everyone, and he was like, no, you know, no. And he ran out the house, and the boys ran after him, you know, to try to calm him down. And I remember coming to my room and falling on my knees. I fell on my knees, and I prayed, and I told God, thank you, because I know that ultimately this was your will. As much as I wanted him to live, I know that this was your will. And I just prayed, and I told God, please give me the strength, like give me the strength that I need to be able to get through this, because I can't do it without you. I need you. And as I prayed that, I felt this overwhelming peace come upon me, and I remember just getting up and saying, okay, you know, let me get it together. And I needed to get it together for my brothers, for my dad, for my kids. My kids had a very, very close relationship with my brother. He loved them so much. And so I got up and I started to just do everything, and it was just like a whirlwind of things, you know. Like I just there's certain aspects of it that I can remember, and there's certain aspects that I can't, because it was just insane, you know. But throughout it all, I saw God's hand. I saw God's hand move in everything, every bit of it. I saw God moving. I saw God taking control and doing everything, you know. My Theo David and Dago, they handled everything, you know. We didn't want to ask anyone for any money. We didn't want to ask anyone for any help. I didn't want to have to put that burden on anyone, so we were going to take control of that, you know, because I'm like, I don't want to have to ask anyone. It's you know, like we'll if I have to give every last dollar that I have, I will do it, because I don't want to have to put that on anyone. And so you know, my Theo David was like, just hold on, just wait, like, you know, we're gonna get this taken care of, like, don't worry. So we, you know, him and Dago, like, they were doing everything, and he's like, we'll let you know how much everyone has to put in, you know. And you know, I thank God for my Theo David and for all of my family and everyone, because at the end of the day, the exact amount of what we were gonna spend on the funeral and everything was the exact amount that everyone gave out of their heart, you know, where we didn't even have to put anything in, because like literally to the T, that's what it was, you know. And to me, I was like blown away by that, because I was like, wow, like that was like literally God put that in everyone's heart to give. And you know, even though we didn't ask anyone, like they gave out of their heart, and it was the exact amount. And you know, and not only that, but I remember, you know, the day that they finally were able to bring his body back over here, I told my husband and my brothers, I'm gonna go before everyone because I want to see him. And they were like, no, you can't go, like not by yourself, like you can't do this. And I said, I'm gonna do this. Like I feel like God put it in me, like I want to go, you know. And so Dago was like, I'll go with you, I'm not gonna let you go alone. So me and Dago went, and I remember like we prayed before we walked in there, and so it was me, Dago, and Crystal, and we went in there, and when we saw him, it didn't look anything like him. And so I couldn't cry because I felt like I didn't know who that was. I didn't know who that person was, because he didn't look like him. He looked so different. And I know it was, a lot of it had to do with all the medicine that they had pumped into his body, and then the from him traveling from California over here, and it had already been like 2-3 weeks, you know, because it took forever for them to transport him. So it was like a lot. It had took a toll on his body, and he looked completely different from what I knew my brother to look like, you know. So I think in a way that was also God, you know, because that kind of, it kind of guarded my heart, because I'm like, well, I don't know who that is. It doesn't look like him. It doesn't look like him. And I saw God's hand in everything, like everything, you know. A lot of it is a blur, but a lot of things that I now like kind of remember, you know, everyone's kindness and generosity. Like I never fully understood that, because I didn't know what it was like to lose someone that I really loved. Like, yes, I had lost 2 grandfathers and a grandmother, but they lived their lives. They got to see their children grow up, their grandchildren, even great grandchildren. So they lived very fulfilled lives. And to me, losing my brother was like insane, because growing up, like all we had was each other, you know. And he was literally like, my brothers are my best friends. Like I love them so much. Morning gets so jealous sometimes, because he's like, you love your brothers more than me, and that's not true. It's not true. I don't love them more than him, but I will ride or die for my brothers, you know. That they were my best friends growing up, and even in the bad times where we argued and stuff, I could never stay angry at them, no matter how mad Pokey ever made me, because he would make me mad sometimes. I could never stay angry at him. I just couldn't. Like, I couldn't. I love them too much to be away from them, or to not talk to them every day, or see them constantly. I have to talk to them. I have to. And every time we would talk, I would always tell them, like all of them, when we talk, I was like, God bless you, I love you, like be careful. And you know, I just had to, because I always wanted them to be safe. And it was hard. I went through this season of like complete brokenness. Like I was never one of those people that was angry at God. I was never mad at God, because I knew that God's hand was in everything. I saw God move in every aspect of that, but I still felt broken. I felt broken, and I felt this disconnect with God. Like the more that I tried to pray, the more that I couldn't get any words out. I couldn't talk. I couldn't pour my heart out to him. And it killed me inside not to be able to tell God how I felt, or pray or worship him. Like I like nothing would come out. And it wasn't because I was angry or upset, because like I said, I saw God move in everything. I saw God answer so many prayers, even prayers that I didn't ask for, he answered. And so to me, it was more of a like, I don't know what's going on. I just feel broken. And I was so broken that I pushed away everyone that I loved, everyone that I cared for, everyone that was there for me. I pushed everyone away. I was in my own little bubble of brokenness, and I didn't want to let anyone in. And I was so broken and so disconnected that I started to drink. And if you know me, you know I don't cuss, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do any of that, because, you know, my relationship with God is everything. And because I couldn't connect with him, I started to drink, and I started, you know, to rebel against God. And it didn't do anything good to me. All it did was make me sick. You know, I already have issues with my liver, and the drinking only made me sick. And it wasn't until February, one day, we went to church, and I heard this sermon that Pastor E gave, and I felt like, wow, that was deep. Like, I feel like God's talking to me. And I remember coming home that night, and me and Martin were just talking, laying in bed talking, and I guess we fell asleep, and we fell asleep dressed and with the light on and everything. We just kind of like knocked out. And I remember waking up. Before that, it had never really hit me that I lost my brother. I always felt like in denial, like, no, this isn't real. But that night, waking up, I woke up with a full-blown panic attack. woke up and I was like, oh my God, my brother is dead. Pokey died. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, it had finally hit me, and I was having a full-blown panic attack where my heart was racing, and I was just like, oh my God, I was hyperventilating because I was freaking out so much. And I started to pray, and I was like, God, please, like, calm my spirit, calm me. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, please calm me, give me your peace. And I remember laying back down because I had, like, when I woke up, I like sat up out of bed and I was freaking out. And I remember laying back down and just falling back to sleep instantly. And when I fell asleep, I started to dream. And I dreamt that we were in this place, and it was just like so many people. It's like a sea of people everywhere. And I was seeing people that I recognized and stuff like that. And I'm like, I want to get out of here. Like, let's go. And they're like, come on. And every time I would try to go to one of them, they would disappear. And I'm like stuck here, And out of nowhere comes this girl that one of my cousins used to date, that passed away when we were in high school. And she was a believer. And I didn't know her all that well, but I knew her. And I remember her coming up to me and grabbing me by my hand and telling me, come on, I'm going to take you to him. And I was just like, okay, I didn't think anything of it. I just was like, I know this person, so I'm going to follow her, And so I followed her, and she took me into this room, and she's like, there, he's right there. And I was like, because there and sitting in a chair in a corner was Pokey. So I ran to him because he had a big old smile on his face, and I ran to him and I jumped on top of him and I hugged him so tight that I knocked him off the chair. We both fell off the chair, and as we fell, I woke up out of the dream, and I just remember crying my eyes out, like crying and sobbing like a little baby. And I was crying so hard that I woke Martin up, and he didn't have to ask why I was crying. He already knew, and he just hugged me, and he just told me, it's okay, baby, just let it out. And I just cried. I cried all night, and he just hugged me, and he just let me cry. And I remember the next day feeling so sad and so broken. Like, if it was the first day that it happened, I just felt so broken by it. But after that, I was able to pray again, and I was able to praise God again, and I felt like God had finally came to me and told me, hey, I let you grieve the way that you wanted to, I let you feel the way that you wanted to, but now it's time for you to get it together, get up and start praising me and seeking me the way you were before, but even more. I'm gonna take you to places that you've never been. And to me, I was so beyond happy. And although I'm forever gonna miss my brother, I'm forever gonna think of him, I'm forever gonna wish that he was here, but I know that he's in a far better place. I know that he's with our Savior. I know that he is, because although my brother was not perfect, he was not a saint, he had his many flaws and his many battles that he tried so hard to overcome, but it was hard. I knew that he had Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. I know that because of that, he is with our Savior. And I just want to encourage you that if you feel broken and you feel like you've struggled and you're too ashamed to come to Christ because you feel like you're too much in your sin, that he won't accept you, that is a lie. That is a lie that the enemy tells you. God says, come as you are. He wants us to come to him. He wants to cleanse us from our sin. He wants to make us new. He wants us to seek him. You don't have to be perfect to come to Christ. You don't have to be perfect. That's why he died for us on the cross, so that he could be that bridge for us to make it to heaven one day. I know that every case is different. I know that everyone losing someone is different, but I just want to give you hope in knowing that it's not always going to feel that way. It's not always going to feel that way, especially if you give it to God. It was hard for me. It was a long, long year journey. And I still cry sometimes. And I still feel sad sometimes. But I also rejoice because I know that I'll get to see him again one day. I know that we'll be together. And I hold on to that. I hold on to those promises. And I look forward to seeing what God has in store for me. God doesn't promise that we're not going to go through pain or through troubles, because we're human. We're gonna deal with sadness and brokenness. We're gonna deal with losing someone. It's inevitable. Death is inevitable. We're all gonna have to lose someone one day, unfortunately. As much as it hurts and as much as it sucks, we're gonna have to, you know, we're not promised tomorrow. So that's why it's so important for us to love each other like today's the last day, because we just never know. Love hard and love God, and hold on to his promises. Hold on to his promises. And I just really wanted to share that. I really wanted to share God's goodness with y'all, because I know that the pain won't last forever. It won't. The hurt won't last forever. But God's promises will. His promises will last a lifetime. So give it to him. Whatever it is that you're facing, give it to him and allow him to work in you. Because that's the only peace. That's the only joy that you will ever get. I promise you, the things of this earth will never fulfill you the way that God will. I've been there. I've done it. And nothing has brought me joy the way that God has. And I want that for all of you. I want y'all to have that joy, that peace that God offers. And that's my story that I really wanted to share with y'all.